Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, and today we're going to talk about the holiday of Shavuos. Well, right away, many viewers, I'm sure, are saying, what's Shavuos? I heard of Passover, high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, of course, everybody knows about Hanukkah. What is Shavuos? And that's what we're here to inform and to educate, and we will talk about Shavuos. Shavuos literally means weeks. What's weeks? It says, well, after Passover, the Jewish people ran out of Egypt. They ran out because they just didn't want to be there anymore. They couldn't be there. But wasn't run out and just go to the park and play some ball. They had a purpose of going out of Egypt, and that was in order to receive the Torah, the instructions from God. Now, I always make a joke about it. It's just that when, a kid leaves school, they're counting down, 30 days to go, 29 days to go. I've seen ribbons, they cut down one day to go. Let's get out of here already. But that's not the proper attitude, I don't think, in school either. You should want to learn, every child. And in any case, when the Jewish people left Passover, they left Egypt on the Passover holiday. That was not their attitude. They would say, wow, this is a privilege. God's going to speak to us in Mount Sinai. And hey, we're going to get the Torah, God's law. This is the biggest privilege in the world. And we're going to love going there. So they did count. And that was 1 day down, 2 days down, when you're anticipating something important. And that's what counting the Omer. So counting because the Omer was a barley offering. In any case, that they were counting up so that they would be able to receive the Torah. When did they receive the Torah? After 7 weeks. Hence, the holiday Shavuos is called the holiday of weeks, because it comes 7 weeks after the Passover holiday. And on the 50th day, meaning 7 weeks plus a day, they did receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. And it was an incredible vision that the Jewish people heard. Actually, it's hard to describe it, because they say they saw what normally is heard. They heard what was normally seen. So obviously I can't describe it that well, because I've never experienced that kind of feeling. Maybe I did in my previous lifetime 3,000 years ago. It was 3,300 years ago when we received the Torah. But in any case, you can just put that, frame the issue. Coming out of Egypt, there were 10 plagues. You were a slave. You gave up all hope of getting free. Now there was plagues on your masters, worst enemies, and the blood. Again, not to say the whole Passover story again. 10 plagues, and then they were chasing after you at the splitting of the Red Sea, and you were just between a rock and a hard place. You had to see what you're supposed to do. Cross. What if someone trapped you in front of the Hudson River? What are you supposed to do? Cross the Hudson River? You don't have a boat. You're trapped. What can you do? And even if you think you may swim, but you have little kids with you and you have possessions with you, what are you going to do? And then the Egyptian, I call them the Marine Corps, I don't know what they were called in Egypt, but whatever, they were tough soldiers. So you had tough soldiers, experienced soldiers on one hand. On one side of you, you had the Red Sea on the other side of you, and you're, like I say, you're between a rock and a hard place. Well, you can imagine us feeling. I'm just trying to imagine that a little bit, how you would be feeling. And in the meantime, the sea split. You walk through the sea, and the Egyptians that were your pursuers were crushed by the waves that came right afterwards. The sea wasn't split for them, and they all died. Again, you can just only imagine, and I'm sure it's only an imagination, to experience such a feeling like that. And now you're on your way to receive the Holy Torah from God. Now when you go there, it's not so simple just traveling 7 weeks. You had the manna from heaven. What are you supposed to eat? Well, they had the matzahs. That's why we eat matzahs on Passover. They did eat matzahs. They had matzahs going out of Egypt. But how long is it supposed to last? Provision. So it lasted a month. So 7 weeks is more than a month. So therefore, what are they going to eat? And therefore, they had the manna from heaven. They were like white coriander seeds. That's what they described. So on one hand, just eat a bunch of seeds. doesn't sound so appetizing. On the other hand, whatever taste, except for 5 tastes, that you could taste whatever you want, a pizza, a hamburger. I'm sure they didn't know those things then, but in any case, that tasted whatever they really wanted to taste, and it was incredible food. So again, more and more miracles are they experienced in the desert. Again, being in a desert, you're all alone, you don't know where you're going to, where you're supposed to head. There's no signs this way to Mount Sinai. It's not like you have a Google map in front of you telling you where to go. So again, the whole idea, you're in trepidation, you don't know where you're going, what's exactly going to happen. You're supposed to receive the Torah, how, what, God's supposed to talk to you. Again, all these things, I don't know if, I try to imagine, and I don't think a human being can really imagine it well, what it means God themselves is speaking to a human being. I mean, we can only a little bit have an imagination what that means. But they did go to Mount Sinai. They prepared themselves. They purified themselves. And at that time, that everybody was there. It's a very important lesson for us also, because I know anti-Semites try to say all the Jewish people are smart and all they're rich, which sounds nice, fine, but it just isn't true. I mean, not everybody is smart, not everybody has money, so it's really an untruth. And Jewish people are a lot different from one from the other. They're always arguing, the old joke, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, but the point is they are different. And at that time, they were all together, people like you would say, on the same page. They were all there to receive the Torah. They had only one mission in mind. God's going to talk to them and receive the Torah. And that's where the 10 Commandments comes into play. The first commandment, I'm the Lord your God, really sounds like a little bit of an introduction. Here I am, hello, I'm God. But the commentaries say that is actually a mitzvah in its own right. And that's the idea that there has to be a faith in God. Before you do anything, you have to believe. Many times people, ask when to come to synagogue or do a mitzvah commandment. Why? Well, what if I say God told you so, which is the truth? Well, who's God? Well, if you don't believe him, then why should you listen to God? I give an example for that. What if I never was a situation, but just give an example. Let's say I'm with a bunch of soldiers. I'm sitting down at a table with them. And the sergeant comes in, or an officer comes in and says, attention. And all the soldiers stand up right away, and they stand at attention. And me, I'd just be sitting there in my chair, yada-da. Well, he said attention. These soldiers stood at attention. Why am I not standing at attention? I'm not a renegade. It's not like I'm rebelling against anything. Well, the obvious answer is because I'm not in the army. I'm not in the army. If an officer says stand at attention, stay there, well, who's he? I don't have to listen to him. I'm not in the U.S. Army. A soldier is part of the U.S. Army. He has to listen, and they have to stand at attention. But it's an important example, a simple example, but it's, I think, an important example, because same thing. Say God says, well, I don't hold my God. I don't listen to him. I care what he says. So why should I listen to him? It's only normal. Why should I listen to, like I say, why should I listen to a lieutenant? I'm not in the U.S. Army. So that's an important point. That's really step one. That's a very important point. You have to have faith in God. I am God. I did you the favor. I took you out of Egypt. You'd still be a slave today. It's interesting. That is a classic question in commentaries. The words are, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. I mean, if you want to introduce yourself, you give the highest praise. Say, I'm the President of the United States, and I drive a car, or I drive a chauffeur. That's what the President of the United States is. So much more than that. Maybe it's true, but you don't just say a minor little thing. I'm President of the United States, I play a good game of golf. What is it? That's what a President of the United States, that's all he does is play golf. So that's also with God. You know who I am, maybe you should say, or maybe God should have said, I am God. I created the heavens and the earth. That's pretty good. All right, I have heaven and earth. There's in Egypt. I took you out of Egypt. Well, it's nice and it's good, but why don't you say something better? You created the heavens and the earth. So the answer is, and these are classic commentaries because the Ten Commandments are in the Bible, commentaries say that what's concerning me? You could say again, maybe with the president, he goes to a country. Well, I don't care. What does that have to mean? Ooh, he decided to lower taxes. I like that guy. He's a good president. Because, he's talking to the heads of state. Isn't that important than cutting a little tax on your behalf? No, what I care about is my taxes. I don't care who he's talking to. I mean, I do a little bit, of course, but that's not really turns me on that he's talking to some foreign head of state. When he says, I'm cutting your taxes. Now you're talking business. I like you. You're a good man. So that's the same thing with God. That he could have said, heavens and earth, very nice. You created heavens and earth, pretty good job. But he says, I took you out of Egypt. You owe me something. You were a slave, and now you're not. You're a free man. And therefore, you should listen to what I have to say. You owe me one, if you want to say that. You owe me your whole life. So that's an important classic idea. But to have that faith, now you say, hey, you did me a good turn, and beyond a good turn. It took me out of slavery. What do you have to say? You want me to do something for you? Fine. I'm willing and glad to do something for you. But, if you don't have that faith, who is God? What did he do for me lately? I mean, of course, God's doing something for every person lately, but, it's hard to see. We're in a dark world, hidden world, and you think, I could do everything by myself. Who needs God? It's an attitude of a lot of people, but you can't start from that point. You have to say, hey, I believe in God, and he did me a good thing. That's why we do have the Passover Seder, and most Jewish people do go to a Seder, and hopefully they understand, hey, I would have been a slave, but now I'm free. So you have to be happy about that. And the second commandment they heard directly from God is you shouldn't have any other gods in front of you. So that's an important point also, because again, you have more probably not today, but in Greek mythology, which of course a few thousand years ago, you could say, there's a head god, he's the head, but there's smaller gods that are in charge of things. And that was, Zeus is the head god, and there's other gods for this, gods for that, and that was Greek mythology, to remove that idea from their minds. Hey, there's one God, he's in charge of everything. There's no rain god, sun god, this god, that god. That there's only one God, and he's in charge of everything and everybody. So that's why it was important to have the second commandment, stated from God himself. Now, as I said before, it's very interesting in the Medrash, is just that, God speaking to you, and again, I'm a rabbi, but I don't know. I don't know if anybody can imagine really what that means. But simply the result is, if God spoke to them, maybe I should bring an example really. At the times of the Gemara, one of the Roman emperors talked to the head rabbi, and they had these debates. Many times in the Talmud they have these debates. The Romans were trying to grapple what Judaism has to say. And he says, we have a God, and I stare him right in the face, the idols. And you have a God, and we don't see him. Moses had to run away from him. Moses couldn't stand, no one could stand there in Mount Sinai. They couldn't take it, that's what I'm saying. So he's saying that there's a difference over there. He says, look at the sun and stare at the sun. He says, you're crazy. Everybody knows you shouldn't stare at the sun. You go blind, 15 seconds, whatever it is. Should not allowed to stare in the sun, you go blind. He says, so you can't even look at the sun and you say you go blind. It would, in my words, blow you out, or blow your vision out. How are you going to look at God? The sun is nothing compared to God himself. So that's a beautiful example of what happened. Well, God did speak to them, and they literally were blown out, as we say. And therefore, they really passed away, and God had to bring some dew, exactly what it is, I don't know myself, some dew to bring it onto the Jewish people. and have them live. He says, all right, we're going to try it again. Second commandment. And again, their souls just blew out of them. They couldn't take it. Such an incredible experience of God speaking to them. So finally he says, we can't take it anymore. This is incredible. So even though there was 10 commandments, only the first 2 they heard from God, and the rest 8 says, go, let Moses, he's the holy man, he could take it. Let him go up to Mount Sinai, get the rest of the Torah, and he'll transmit it down to us. We can't have it directly from God anymore because we'll perish, we'll all die. It's just too much of a spiritual charge for us to take any more than the 2. But even though the truth of the matter is, in those 2, like I said, positive, believe in God, and negative, don't have any other gods, the rabbis say really they heard everything in a very general way. So you got the point. The point's the point, but obviously you extrapolate. There's not only 2 mitzvahs, there's 613 mitzvahs, and there's a lot of mitzvahs that are commanded, again, all in the Bible, and all besides those 2 transmitted from God to Moses to the Jewish people. So that's how we have the Masorah, that everything from the Masorah means the tradition that's handed down directly from God, but it just maybe went through Moses, most of the mitzvahs. Now, Mount Sinai, there was something also very special. It's interesting that I just want to relate a relevant story that someone told me. Now, certain places are holy in the world. For example, as we live today, and it's actually a bone of contention in the world, is that the mounts, the Har HaBayis, we call it in Hebrew, is the Temple Mount. And the Muslim thinks it's holy, and the Jewish people think it's holy. There's a lot of fighting going on, unfortunately, in Israel, even today. So things happened thousands of years ago, and they're still fighting about it. In any case, that was a holy place, and even though I know Jewish people, you read, go up on Temple Mount, really the rabbis don't want people to go up on the Temple Mount, because even though it's rubble, or it's just not holy, it's holy, but there's no building there. The temple was destroyed. All there's left is a western wall, and you stay on one side of the wall and don't go inside of it. In any case, it's holy, but you say, well, there's nothing there, there's nothing Jewishy there, no temple there. What's so holy? But still, the holiness remains. Now, Mount Sinai said clearly, after God was there, he left, and therefore afterwards that they could go up on Mount Sinai. So exactly, it's very interesting, and I have read books about it, exactly where Mount Sinai is. Some say it's in Sinai Desert, there's Mount Sinai. Other people say in Saudi Arabia. It's really, I don't think there's 100% consensus of where it really is. Wherever it is, some people think they know where it is, fine. And I know one person who went up there. Now it's in the Sinai Peninsula, and Israel took it over in the 1967 war, but they gave it back in a peace treaty, and tourists do go there. It's still a little dangerous, whatever. So in any case, this person did go there, and he says he saw little rocks that had little burnt marks in it. Very interesting. So when you go up the mountain, you go to Adirondack, you see burnt marks in rocks. Why are there burnt marks in rocks? But this is part of when God did come down on Mount Sinai. It said it was like a burning mountain. So I don't know if there were trees there, but it says there was nice vegetation afterwards. But in any case, why should a mountain burn? And the rocks, why should a rock burn? In any case, it does say it burnt, and this person, I put my stamp of validity on it, because you can think what you want. Like I say, you don't exactly know where Mount Sinai is, but he did find little rocks, and he brought them back to Albany and showed us that he went up there, and there was like these burnt, and there's like bushes, and it's very interesting figures inside the rock, which were God made. They weren't man-made pictures. So just as a side note, that there really was an incredible happening, if I don't know, that's underscored, the happening at Mount Sinai. But from that, now remember what I said before, there were so many different people at Mount Sinai. This is a very important point now, because I said it's our tradition, it's the validity why we keep the Torah. And again, people could say, who's God to tell me? Well, God wrote the Bible. Who says? Where's the signature? Whatever. Can they ask what you want? But listen to this interesting argument. It's from the Kuzari, written about 1,000 years ago. And his argument was like this, to prove that Torah did come from God. He says that, it says in the Bible, the story that I told you, that the Jewish people went to Mount Sinai, God spoke to them, and they received the Torah, right, in one line. Now, it also said it wasn't one person that received it, because one person could tell you anything. I could tell you, I'm a holy man, and I'm the Messiah, and I'm God. Maybe. It's not true. But in any case, maybe you want to believe me. You're good viewers. But it's surely not true. But on the other hand, one person could tell you a lot of different things. Now, if you get 600,000 people, and we said they're not all smart, they come from all different shades of different kind of people, rich, poor, smart, dumb, different kinds of Jewish people. And they gave that over to the children, and that's what happens at the Passover Haggadah. That is the tradition. Every year it says that in the Bible also, teach it to your children. That at that time the Jewish people gave it over to their children and said, God spoke to me. Kid says, really, Dad? Yeah, it really happened. So again, a few people can fool another few people, but you're not going to get 600,000 people and someone say, hey, uncle, I heard God spoke to you. My father said, and you were there too. Baloney. What do you think? God spoke to us at Mount Sinai. You crazy? There would have been, think about it, there would have been some idea, some group that didn't hold by it. And nobody ever throughout history said it didn't happen. I'll give you more of an example what happened, like a contemporary issue. So everybody knows, anybody went to a little bit grammar school, George Washington was the first president of the United States. Now, there's a few 100 million people in America, 7 billion people in the world. Did you ever meet one person that said, it's baloney what you're teaching you in that textbook, that he was the first president of the United States? They're teaching a lot of baloney because of, if they taught it, you can see a book 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there would have been somebody saying, they're telling the American people this hogwash, this baloney, that George, whoever heard of, what are you teaching kids, this lies and this falsehood? But you never heard of such a thing. Whoever heard that George Washington was not the president of the United States? So even though you do not have one witness on the face of the earth or in the United States, whatever, hundreds of millions of people, that said, yeah, I was there. I'm telling you, what do you tell me? It's a lie. I was there and I saw George Washington. Well, it's obviously 200 years ago, even more. And obviously, it's 200 years old. So obviously, it's a ridiculous argument. But then it was so ridiculous, then why do you believe it? Why do we believe that George Washington was the first president when you cannot find me one person to testify that he was? Because it's simply, why do you believe anything remembering George Washington? Hundreds of years ago, 200 years ago, there were thousands, surely 10,000, I don't know the population, hundreds of thousands of people in the United States, in Great Britain that knew about George Washington in the Western world. And there's nobody in France and Great Britain says, these Americans are a bunch of baloney talkers. George Washington wasn't their first president. They don't know what they're talking about. The whole country is based on false. No one says such a thing. So therefore, if you sit back and saying, I guess it's true. You don't even guess it's true. You know it's true. If they say George Washington was the first president, you accept it. So that's our life. That's our history. It's just without a doubt. That's what you're taught, and you know that. So it's the same thing, even though it's 3,300 years ago. The Torah was given on Mount Sinai, and it's super long ago. Maybe you could say somebody's great-grandfather, they talked to them, whatever, 200 years ago. Their grandfather taught to their grandfather. All right, you can have something. But that's really with the Jewish people also. So it's not 200 years ago, it's 3,300 years ago. But that from father to grandfather, great-grandfather, et cetera, etc., going back 3,000 years, that's been handed down to us. My father taught me this, his grandfather taught, his father taught that, his father, his father, his father, his father, an unbroken chain of Jewish tradition that God spoke to the Jewish people in Mount Sinai. So just like you believe George Washington was the first president, you really should believe logically. Now, I'm not talking about spiritual belief and having visions. Logically, it only makes sense that the Jewish people should believe that God spoke to Jewish people in Mount Sinai. And from there is very interesting that there is an interesting medrash, like the homiletics, that said really that God is not contained in one area, that the whole world, that said the birds didn't twitter, and everything was quiet. And people were asking, what's happening in the world? Well, maybe an atomic bomb, who knows, a neutron bomb, who knows what's happening? Yeah, I'm making jokes. But in any case, what's happening in the world? They said God is giving the Torah to the Jewish people. So really, if you think about it, just about everybody in the world who knows anything about Western civilization, even in the Eastern, the Far East, understands there's Israel, there's the Jewish people, and the story of the Bible. Billions of people on the face of the earth. Every Christian, every Muslim believes in the Old Testament. And people in the Far East understand that also, that this was what Shavuos holiday we commemorate. Why it's not so, you're supposed to listen to the Ten Commandments reread from the Bible in the Torah scroll on Shavuos. And that is, it's not that popular. Maybe it's in the middle of May and June. There's different reasons for it. Maybe there's no gifts like Hanukkah, or get the family together like Passover. Maybe there's different reasons, but it truly is an important holiday. And just to conclude with a lot of people who do know about Shavuos, there's a dairy meal. Usually on a holiday and a Sabbath, you always have a meat meal. I know there are a lot of vegetarians out there. They always talk to me. But on the other hand, they had a meat meal. You know, you go to a good wedding, and they're not going to give you scrambled eggs. They're going to give you a steak or whatever, at least a piece of chicken. At a bar mitzvah, at a wedding, a good meal. So Sabbath and the holidays, you have a good meal. But the only difference is that on Shavuos, on this the holiday, you eat dairy. So the question is, well, dairy, eating a blintz with sour cream, all of a sudden it's a holiday, it's an important holiday. It's just because in order to get a piece of meat kosher, it's a long process. It has to be slaughtered correctly, just again in a few seconds, and certain parts, the blood has to be salted out, and it has to be processed, bottom line, not to get into all process here, but it has to be processed. So all of a sudden, they got the Torah and they saying, well, you have to eat kosher meat. Kosher meat? It's going to take a long time to prepare, so we'll eat milk over here. Milk is easy. You just milk a cow and you got a cup of milk. In any case, that is the reason for that tradition. So you'll see a lot of dairy foods if you read the Jewish papers or follow the Jewish traditions. That's the reason for the dairy food. In any case, just give you some glimpse of the holiday Shavuos. It's a little bit neglected in Jewish life amongst a lot of Jewish people, but it still has a really, really incredible importance. The whole idea of the Torah given to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai is the major foundation of Judaism, and it should be always remembered. Thank you very much.